The crystalline surface of Zarvek's exoskeleton rippled with iridescent patterns as they stalked through the dense undergrowth of Colony World HC 2971. Centuries of hunting had honed their senses to perfection, yet something felt different about this prey. The Kirox hunter had claimed countless species across the galaxy, but humans were new, an unknown variable in a universe of predictable quarry. Overhead, twin moons cast pale light through perpetual storm clouds, creating an ever-shifting tapestry of shadows. Perfect hunting conditions for a Kirox. Their kind had evolved on a world of eternal twilight, where being the apex predator meant mastering the art of patience and precision. Supreme Hunter came the subvocalized transmission from Reichtel, one of the younger hunters. The human settlement lies 2 kilometers ahead. Initial scans show minimal defenses. Zarvek's inner membranes flickered in acknowledgement. This would be a learning experience for the hunting party's newest members. The Kirox had operated unchallenged for millennia, systematically culling lesser species to maintain what they viewed as cosmic balance. Each new spacefaring race eventually learned to fear them. It was simply the natural order. The settlement appeared suddenly through the mist. Prefabricated structures arranged in concentric circles, with a central command hub rising like a metal spire. Primitive by galactic standards, yet there was something peculiar about its layout. The buildings seemed randomly placed, but Zarvek's experienced eye detected subtle patterns suggesting defensive positions. Curious, Zarvek transmitted to the hunting party. They anticipate conflict, yet their technology suggests they couldn't possibly know of our existence. Perhaps they war among themselves, suggested another hunter. Silence, Zarvek commanded, detecting movement ahead. A single human emerged from one of the structures, carrying what appeared to be maintenance equipment. The creature was small, soft-skinned, with no natural defenses, precisely what their preliminary studies had suggested. Yet something about its movements gave Zarvek pause. The human walked with purpose, but its head swiveled periodically, scanning the tree line. Not with fear, but with expectation. In all their centuries of hunting, Zarvek had never seen prey behave quite this way. Most species developed their survival instincts over generations of being hunted. These humans had only recently reached the stars. "We take this one," Zarvek transmitted. Standard isolation protocol. The hunting party moved with liquid grace, their crystalline forms refracting moonlight as they encircled the human. It was their most basic strategy. Cut off all escape routes, then close in for the kill. The human continued its work, seemingly oblivious. Then it happened. Just as Zarvek prepared to give the signal, the human stopped. Not in fear, not in surprise, but with the deliberate stillness of a predator that has spotted its prey. It turned slowly, looking directly at where Zarvek stood concealed in the shadows. "I was wondering when you'd make your move," the human said aloud, its voice carrying clearly through the night air. "We've been watching you watching us for days." Zarvek felt their hunting party's collective shock ripple through their neural network. Impossible. Their stealth technology was perfect, developed over thousands of years of evolution and technological advancement. The human set down its tools with careful precision. "You should know," it continued conversationally, "that humans don't appreciate being hunted. We tend to take it personally." Before Zarvek could process this unprecedented situation, warning signals flared across their neural web. Hidden defensive turrets emerged from what they had assumed were random debris piles. The settlement's seemingly haphazard layout suddenly revealed itself as a carefully crafted killing ground. "Your stealth tech is impressive," the human said, now smiling in a way that made Zarvek's crystalline form resonate with an unfamiliar frequency. "But we learned to see in the dark long before we learned to walk upright. You've been hunting sapient species for millennia. Well, we spent millions of years being both predator and prey. We never forgot either role." Zarvek raised their neural barriers just as the first electromagnetic pulse swept through the area. It was calibrated precisely to the frequency of their crystalline biology, a fact that should have been impossible for humans to know. The younger hunters stumbled, their coordinated hunt falling into disarray. This was never a colony, the human explained, that unsettling smile still in place. It's a trap. We've been leaving breadcrumbs across this sector for months, waiting for you to take the bait. Because you see, we have questions about why so many promising civilizations just disappear. And now we have our answer. For the first time in centuries, Zarvek felt something alien crawl through their neural pathways. Doubt. These humans hadn't just prepared for conflict, they had orchestrated this entire encounter. They had turned themselves into bait, counting on the Kirox's predatory nature. As more humans emerged from the buildings, carrying weapons that hummed at exactly the right frequency to shatter crystalline exoskeletons, Zarvek made a decision that would reshape their species' future. They gave the retreat signal, not a tactical withdrawal, but a full retreat. Because in that moment, Zarvek understood a fundamental truth. They had not found new prey. They had found a species that had mastered both sides of the predator-prey relationship and had been waiting patiently in the shadows, just like them, but with a far more dangerous purpose. The galaxy's greatest hunters flowed into the night, leaving behind the sound of human laughter, a sound that would haunt Zarvek's neural pathways for centuries to come. The crystalline spires of the Kirox hunting vessel pierced the void of space, its faceted surfaces absorbing all light. In the command nexus, Zarvek replayed the neural recordings from their failed hunt for the 100th time. 3 lunar cycles had passed since their retreat from HC 2971, yet the encounter continued to disturb their usually ordered thoughts. "The Council demands answers," Richtol transmitted, approaching with appropriate deference. "No hunting party has ever retreated before. They question your judgment, Supreme Hunter." Zarvek's external layers shifted, creating patterns that reflected their inner turmoil. "Then they understand nothing of true hunting," they responded. "Tell me, young one, what is the primary rule of the hunt?" "Know your prey," Richtol answered without hesitation. "And that is precisely what we failed to do." Zarvek's form pulsed with colored light as they accessed the ship's historical archives. "We assumed humans were like the others, predictable, bound by the same fears and limitations we've seen countless times before. We were wrong." The neural recordings played again, humans emerging from shadows with weapons perfectly designed to counter Kirox biology, their trap laid with a precision that spoke of deep understanding. But it was something else that truly haunted Zarvek, the complete absence of fear in their eyes. "Supreme Hunter," another warrior transmitted, entering the Nexus. "We've detected human activity in the Carina sector, a small research vessel, isolated from their main territories, perhaps an opportunity to restore our honor." Zarvek considered the proposal. A single vessel, far from support, seemed like an ideal target, yet that previous encounter had taught them caution. "Show me," they commanded. The neural network projected images of a modest spacecraft, apparently conducting stellar observations. Its design was typically human, functional rather than aesthetic, with none of the elegance other species favored. But something about its positioning nagged at Zarvek's hunter instincts. "It's too perfect," they finally transmitted. "Too vulnerable. Too tempting." Despite their warnings, the Council overrode Zarvek's concerns. The Kirox had a reputation to maintain, and this isolated vessel presented an opportunity to prove that their previous retreat had been an anomaly. Zarvek was ordered to lead the hunt. The attack began precisely as planned. The hunting vessel materialized from the void, its crystalline structure capable of bending both light and sensor readings. The human ship appeared completely unaware, continuing its scientific observations. "Disable their engines," Zarvek commanded, still uneasy. "No unnecessary risks." The Kirox ship fired a precision burst of energy, carefully calibrated to overload the human vessel's propulsion systems. The beam struck true and passed straight through the target. Hologram. Zarvek's warning came too late. Space itself seemed to ripple as three human warships dropped their own stealth fields, emerging from precisely calculated positions around the Kirox vessel. Their weapons were already firing, each shot striking the crystalline hull at frequencies that created devastating resonance patterns. They knew, Reichtal transmitted in disbelief. They understood exactly how our hull technology works. Zarvek watched as their ship's outer layers began to fracture. The humans hadn't just copied Kirox stealth technology. They'd improved upon it, found its weaknesses, and turned it against its creators. In mere months, they had achieved what other species failed to do in centuries. All hunters, prepare for emergency translation, Zarvek commanded. But before they could activate their escape protocols, a transmission cut through their neural network, a human voice, clear and confident. The thing about ambush predators, the voice said, is that they're really good at hiding. But that means they never learn to look for things that hide better than they do. We've been studying you since HC 2971, learning your patterns, your technologies, your weaknesses. Consider this a formal request. Stay away from human space. As their vessel initiated its emergency protocols, barely escaping the tactical trap, Zarvek experienced another new sensation: respect. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They had systematically deconstructed everything that made the Kirox deadly, then demonstrated their understanding with devastating efficiency. Back in safe space, Zarvek gathered their hunting party. "We made a grave error," they transmitted. "We thought humans were prey learning to defend themselves. The truth is far more dangerous. They were predators all along, playing at being prey. And now, thanks to our arrogance, they know exactly how to hunt us." The crystalline hunters stood in silence, their neural network humming with a new emotion: fear. Not the simple fear of prey, but the complex fear of a predator that has discovered it is no longer at the top of the food chain. In the darkness of space, Zarvek made a decision that would change Kirox society forever. Their species would need to evolve beyond being mere hunters. Because somewhere out there, humanity was watching, learning, and waiting. Not with fear, but with methodical, calculated purpose. The grand crystalline chambers of the Kirox High Council vibrated with discord. Hundreds of hunters projected their neural patterns simultaneously, creating a cacophony of light and thought that reflected their growing unease. At the center, Zarvek stood motionless, their form a study in controlled tension. "You suggest we abandon the hunt entirely." The first hunter's neural signature pulsed with indignation. Thousands of cycles of tradition, discarded because of one species. "I suggest we survive," Zarvek responded, projecting memories of their encounters with humanity. "While we debate, they adapt. While we cling to tradition, they innovate. They are unlike anything we have hunted before." The chamber's crystalline walls reflected a new pattern, a distress signal from the outer territories. 3 hunting vessels had gone silent in the past solar rotation. Their last transmission showed no signs of combat, no warnings. They had simply ceased to exist. "Impossible," the first hunter declared. No species could overcome 3 hunting parties without raising alerts. As if in answer to their dismissal, a new signal penetrated the chamber's supposedly impenetrable defenses. The neural network filled with images. The wreckage of Kirox vessels, carefully dissected. Human ships moved among the debris, not destroying, but studying, learning. Their methodical efficiency was more terrifying than any display of aggression. "They're not fighting us," Zarvek transmitted, their pattern heavy with realization. "They're researching us. Every encounter, every engagement. It's all data to them. They're building a comprehensive understanding of everything we are." The council chamber erupted in chaos as more reports flooded in. Human vessels had been detected on the edges of Kirox space, always watching, always gathering information. They never initiated combat, but any hunting party that approached them failed to return. "Supreme Hunter," Reichtal transmitted privately to Zarvek. "The humans sent another message. They request a meeting." The council fell silent. In all their history, no prey species had ever dared to propose diplomatic contact with the Kiroks. It was unprecedented, unthinkable, and yet entirely characteristic of humanity's audacity. They named you specifically, Supreme Hunter, Rektal continued. They say they've been studying your hunting patterns. They believe you understand what others of your kind do not. Zarvek's external layers rippled with complex emotions. They'd been hunting me, just as I once hunted them. The difference is, they succeeded. The meeting took place on neutral ground, a desolate moon orbiting a dying star. Zarvek arrived alone, as requested, their crystalline form refracting the red giant's light. A single human waited on the cratered surface, wearing an environmental suit that seemed unnecessarily bulky. Dr. Sarah Chen, the human, introduced herself through external speakers. I've been studying your species' hunting patterns for the past year. Fascinating evolutionary adaptations. You've done more than study, Zarvek observed. You've systematically dismantled our hunting strategies. True. The human's voice carried no hint of boasting. We needed to understand if you could learn, adapt, evolve beyond your predatory instincts. You, Zarvek, showed the most promise. You recognize what we were doing. Testing us. Zarvek transmitted, neural patterns shifting with comprehension. Everything, from that first colony to the research vessel ambush, it was all an experiment. Humanity has a long history with predators, Dr. Chen explained. On our homeworld, we learned to coexist with some, domesticate others, and when necessary, eliminate those that couldn't adapt to changing circumstances. We're giving the Kiroks the same choice. Zarvek absorbed this, understanding the implicit threat beneath the diplomatic words. You want us to stop hunting sentient species. We want you to evolve, she corrected. Your species has remarkable potential. Your neural network technology, your crystalline biology, it's extraordinary. But you've limited yourselves to a single role in the galaxy's ecosystem. We're offering you a chance to become something more. As they stood on that barren moon, Zarvek realized the humans had achieved something no other species had managed. They had forced the Kiroks to confront their own nature, to question traditions that had defined them for millennia. And if we refuse? Dr. Chen's reply was calm, matter-of-fact. Then we'll do what humans have always done with predators that threaten our community. We've already proven we can hunt you more effectively than you can hunt us. The choice is yours. Returning to the council chamber, Zarvek understood that the galaxy's greatest hunters faced their most significant challenge. Not a fight for survival, but a fight to transcend their own nature. The humans had not merely defeated them. They had offered them a path to transformation. The choice they faced would reshape their species forever. But as Zarvek shared Dr. Chen's message with the council, they knew humanity had already changed them irrevocably. For the first time in their history, the Kiroks would have to learn to be something other than hunters, or face extinction at the hands of prey that had become more dangerous than any predator. In the cycles following the lunar meeting, Zarvek found themselves in an unprecedented position. Learning from former prey, the Kiroks Council had reluctantly accepted humanity's terms, and now their greatest hunter served as liaison to the species that had fundamentally changed their society. The human research facility orbiting Jupiter was unlike anything in Kirok's experience. Where their structures emphasized natural crystalline geometry, this station was a maze of practical efficiency. Dr. Chen led Zarvek through corridors filled with displays showing centuries of Earth's natural history. You see, she explained, gesturing to images of Earth's prehistoric predators, we evolved alongside creatures that could have easily destroyed us. Our ancestors weren't the strongest or the fastest, but we had something different. Zarvek's neural patterns shifted as they studied the ancient creatures. You were prey animals, they transmitted, yet you survived. More than survived, Chen corrected. We thrived precisely because we understood fear intimately. Fear taught us creativity. Fear drove us to innovate. Fear made us stronger. The displays change, showing humanity's progression. Crude stone tools becoming spears, becoming bows, becoming increasingly sophisticated weapons. But alongside the weapons were other innovations: art, writing, mathematics, music. Your species never experienced fear, Chen continued. You evolved as apex predators, unchallenged, unchanged. Fear was something you inflicted on others, never something you had to process yourselves. That was your weakness. Zarvek absorbed this insight, their crystalline form resonating with new understanding. When we first encountered humans, you showed no fear. Now I understand. You had already mastered it. Exactly. Chen smiled. Fear is a teacher, but only if you learn to move through it rather than avoid it. Every human child learns this. We tell them stories of monsters, then teach them how to face those monsters. We turn fear into determination. They reached a laboratory where human scientists worked alongside several younger Kiroks. The crystalline hunters were learning to apply their neural network technology to scientific research rather than hunting strategies. Their natural abilities, once used only for tracking prey, were being redirected toward understanding the universe itself. Your species has spent millennia perfecting the art of taking life, Chen observed. Imagine what you could achieve if you dedicated those same resources to preserving it, understanding it, enhancing it. A memory surfaced in Zarvek's neural pathways, their first human encounter, that unsettling smile in the face of what should have been certain death. You knew, even then, that fear would never be enough to stop humanity. Fear is a warning system, nothing more, Chen agreed. It tells us there's danger, but it doesn't dictate our response to that danger. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our lack of fear. It's our ability to feel fear and act anyway. The laboratory's screens displayed new data, Kirok's neural networks being adapted for faster-than-light communications, their crystalline technology revolutionizing energy storage, their hunting instincts being channeled into exploring unknown regions of space. Your species hunted for dominance, Chen said softly. We hunted for understanding. That's why we succeeded where others failed. We didn't just want to defeat you. We wanted to understand you, to find a way to transform a potential enemy into a potential ally. Zarvek's form pulsed with colors that represented an emotion they had no traditional pattern for: hope. We thought ourselves the galaxy's perfect predators, but we were stagnant. Humanity proved that true perfection lies in the ability to change. As they watched the younger Kiroks working alongside humans, Zarvek realized their species had found something far more valuable than prey. They had found a future. Their hunting instincts, refined over millennia, were being transformed into tools for exploration and discovery. There will be resistance, Zarvek transmitted. Many of our kind still cling to the old ways. Of course, Chen acknowledged. Change is never easy. But consider this. Your species spent thousands of years learning to be the perfect predator. Now you have the opportunity to learn something far more challenging: how to be more than what evolution intended. The former supreme hunter watched as a young Kiroks successfully adapted their neural network to map a stellar phenomenon, their crystalline form glowing with achievement. In that moment, Zarvek understood that humanity's greatest victory hadn't been defeating the Kiroks. It had been showing them a better way to hunt, not for prey, but for knowledge itself. A century had passed since the Kiroks first encountered humanity. In the grand teaching chamber of the Reformed Hunters Academy, Zarvek's crystalline form cast prismatic patterns across an audience of young hunters. But unlike their ancestors, these hunters sought different quarry: knowledge, understanding, discovery. Tell us again, a young initiate transmitted, their neural patterns bright with curiosity, about the species that changed our path. Zarvek's external layers shifted, displaying the memory patterns of that first human encounter. The chamber filled with holographic representations, a technology adapted from their old hunting displays, but now used for education. We thought ourselves invincible, Zarvek began. their neural transmission reaching every student. For millennia, we had been the galaxy's apex predators. Every species we encountered followed predictable patterns: fight, flight, or submission. Then we met humanity. The holographic display showed the trap at HC 2971, the research vessel ambush, the systematic way humans had dismantled Kirok's hunting strategies. But now, a century later, these were not memories of defeat. They were lessons in humility and growth. Humans taught us the most important lesson any predator can learn, Zarvek continued. True strength lies not in domination, but in adaptation. They could have destroyed us. Instead, they challenged us to evolve. The chamber's displays shifted to show the modern Kirok civilization, their crystalline cities now centers of learning, their hunting vessels repurposed for exploration, their neural networks expanded into a galaxy-spanning web of knowledge sharing. But why? Another student transmitted. Why did they spare us when we had hunted so many others? Because humans understand something we had forgotten, Zarvek answered. The greatest predator is not the one with the sharpest claws or the strongest armor. It's the one that can become something new when the universe demands change. The displays showed scenes from Earth's history, prehistoric humans huddled around fires, telling stories of monsters, then learning to overcome those monsters. Cities rising from wilderness, technology advancing not through conquest, but through necessity and curiosity. Humanity's greatest weapon was never their technology or their tactics, Zarvek transmitted. It was their ability to look at a predator and see not just a threat, but potential. They understood that fear can either paralyze or catalyze, and they chose to let it drive them forward. A final hologram appeared, the current joint human-Kirok's deep space expedition, where crystalline ships now worked alongside human vessels to explore the galaxy's furthest reaches. Their complementary strengths had opened up new possibilities in space exploration, scientific research, and cultural exchange. Remember this, Zarvek's transmission resonated through the neural network. We were not defeated by humanity. We were transformed by them. They showed us that being an apex predator means more than being the strongest or the most feared. It means being able to recognize when the time has come to hunt for something greater than prey. The young initiates absorbed this lesson, their crystalline forms reflecting patterns of understanding. They would be the first generation of Kiroks to grow up never having hunted another sentient species. Instead, they hunted for answers to the universe's mysteries, for solutions to its challenges, for ways to preserve life rather than end it. The humans have a saying, Zarvek concluded. The only constant is change. Our species resisted this truth for millennia, believing our perfection lay in remaining unchanged. Now we understand. True perfection lies in the ability to transform, to grow, to become more than what we were. As the teaching session ended, Zarvek moved to the chamber's observation deck. The stars stretched out before them, no longer territories to hunt, but frontiers to explore. A human ship passed by, its crew working seamlessly with Kirok's researchers. The sight would have been unthinkable a century ago. In the reflected crystalline surfaces, Zarvek saw their own transformed pattern, no longer just a hunter, but a teacher, a bridge between what their species had been and what it could become. Humanity had taught them the most vital lesson of all. The greatest hunt was not for prey, but for purpose. And in finding that purpose, the galaxy's deadliest predators had become something far more powerful. They had become explorers, innovators, and ultimately, allies in humanity's endless quest to understand the universe and their place within it.